Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Review Crew. It's where No Presidium's writers and editors gather to chat about what we've been seeing during the week. It's a partner to the review rundown on the site. And I'm your host for today, Kevin Gossett, the LA Reviews editor. We also have our founder on board.
This is Noah Nilsson. I'm going to mute myself for a second so I can type.
Staying in Los Angeles, we have our arts editor.
Hi, that's me, Laura Hess.
Moving east, we have our Chicago curator.
Hey everyone, it's Patrick McLean.
And then all the way east, we have our East Coast curator at large.
Hi there, this is Blake.
All right, we got a real full show today. We had a short, we were just a few of us last week. Now we got all five. So we're going to start off with some news. A couple of big things dropped in the immersive world. And the first one was Secret Cinema is coming to Los Angeles with Arcane, which is based on League of Legends by Riot Games, whose studio is also based in Santa Monica in the Los Angeles area. And Arcane, I believe, is a show that will be premiering on Netflix soon.
November.
Look at Blake with the date.
I know. Coincidentally, that is when the immersive event by Secret Cinema will open in Los Angeles. So if people aren't familiar with Secret Cinema, they usually put on a kind of large-scale immersive show and then screen a movie, or in this case, a television show episode to go along with it. There will be 2 ticket levels with this one, and I think they'll be on sale by the time you hear this. There's a general admission, and then there's a VIP, which includes some early access, and what they're saying are additional storylines and a premium area. I'm not quite sure what that means. I have never been to a Secret Cinema show, as they have previously all been in London, I believe. Also of note, and I think we'll discuss this a little bit later, is the event is being recorded and will be streamed each night on the show website. And to attend, participants will need to be agreed to be filmed and streamed. I'm not sure if we've ever seen anything like that, but that should be interesting, and maybe we'll open this up to a wider audience. Oh no, go ahead.
Maybe we should we start with LOL first and then do the other one, because there is another big one, but do we want to talk about these together?
I think we're going to talk about them together because it's kind of what Patrick and Blake were doing yesterday. So let me cover the second one.
Yeah, let's set up this grand duel.
Okay, let's go then. Here's the other one.
And then next up, we've got Arkham Asylum, which is Department Studios and Myriad Entertainment working in partnership with Warner Brothers and DC Comics for a Batman-themed immersive, which I think is super cool and one of the bigger kind of IPs we've seen in the immersive space. That is coming to London in September of next year, so that one's a ways away, and we don't have as much information about it because it is farther away. But tickets will go on sale later this month. As far as kind of what that one's about, it will take place in Arkham Asylum and looks to be an original story focused on saving Gotham City.
Saving Gotham. Sorry, I'm contractually required to do the voice.
Of course. Yeah. And then it seems like it might feature at least Scarecrow, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy, who were billed in some of the kind of interview articles that went up with the announcement of that show.
And then they prefer Dr. Jonathan Crane, Dr. Pamela Isley, and Miss Selena Kyle. Thank you very much.
I apologize.
So don't slander them with these nom de crimes that, anyway.
That was never proven in court that they were those people.
Never proven in court. Harvey Dent never proved any of that before he very provably turned into anyway.
I'd vote for him again in an election.
You would, Patrick. You would.
I believe in Harvey Dent.
And then before we get extra nerdy with it, they are billing this one as not for the faint-hearted, and participants will need to be 18 plus to get into the show. So I don't know quite what that entails.
Bat nipples anymore? Yeah. Sorry, I had.
And now I'm going to turn Patrick, Blake, and Noah loose on what will probably be a very nerdy discussion about these topics. And Noah will probably chime in, but I know they have very strong feelings.
Let's get the 3 big nerds and let them rip each other's throats out.
10 minutes on the clock. Here we go. All right. We could do this all night, but we're just going to do 10 minutes. We're going to have tryouts. So,
I'm gonna start happy and say that I think that the Arkham Asylum experience sounds spectacular. I think if you had to do a Batman immersive, doing location based is great. Batman has a universal iconography that appeals to the normies, in addition to both the comic book people and the diehard immersive theater people. And Arkham brings some fun haunted house flavor to the whole affair.
Right, and
It's a serious house for serious people.
my God,
Oh yeah,
everyone Google that. Get it? That's a specific reference.
deep cut.
And yeah, and here's the thing: like, I think Batman is a great property. I think to explore the asylum would be a really kind of cool thing. The issue that I raise is almost in a way of, to be very blunt about it, like in comparison to Arcane, is who cares? Like, in many ways, I think
I'm giving you like 15 like disturbed cat gifs mentally right now. Like my ears are back,
Hey,
my
trust
eyes are
me.
like, what? Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to be taking the side of this argument against Batman experiences, but here we are, because
No wonder you'd vote for Harvey Dent.
I
So-
Well, there are two sides to every coin. Let's hear him out.
because while I think, unfortunately right now we know very little about what this Arkham Asylum experience is going to be like, what it's going to entail. All we know is that it's going to be in London, and it seems to be for those of older. But then the question becomes, in many ways, I, I think the news with Secret Cinema partnering with League of Legends, which is a massive video game that has communities built into it, that people are playing it today, are actively involved, is the more exciting thing. And I think that's the thing that's going to really get people involved and excited about immersive entertainment. I feel like the argument we got into yesterday before all this was, what are the kids going to do? Are the
Okay.
kids...
That's kids with
Okay.
a Z.
Yes,
So-
with a Z.
So let me well, before Blake Jensen, let me drop a little bit of context here, because from obviously from our point of view as observers of the field, Secret Cinema being attached to something, and it's kind of interesting that Secret Cinema in England has been attached to the Stranger Things activation and to the Bridgerton activation, both involving Netflix. Major collaborations. Here in the States, those activations were branded Fever primarily. This is the first major Netflix Secret Cinema collab, not branded Fever here in the States. They don't seem to be using Fever as their ticketing site. So there's a lot of criminology going around in the field right now. It's like, oh, what's going on with that? But we do know, kind of BTS stuff, that at least some of the creative on the Stranger Things activation that was here in LA during pandemic at the parking lot of the Row DTLA, that was using some of the Secret Cinema, to our best of our knowledge, I'm going to say, that was using some of the Secret Cinema creative, but that Netflix and Secret Cinema, their relationship is moving forward with this League of Legends setup. We know that a couple of years ago, Secret Cinema had announced some plans with Disney. I can't remember if they were part of their accelerator or not, but there was definitely some talk going on that hit the trades at one point. But this is the first time we've seen a Secret Cinema branded event here in the States. As immersive nerds, that's very exciting. Context on the people.
To jump in real quick, have any of us done a Secret Cinema event? I feel like probably not, because
Well,
they've
so
been-
Like, have you done one in
again,
London?
The Stranger
Laura?
Things, I did the Stranger Things drive-in too, and reviewed it for NoPro, and
Right.
and it was fantastic. I think it was so well designed. In terms of what Noah's saying, exclusively Secret Cinema, no Fever involved. I personally haven't, but I thought the Stranger Things drive-in to experience was so artfully done.
Yeah. And and there is some question on that one, mostly because Fever's a little bit of a black box, and like they were talking about secret cinema at the beginning, and then they weren't, and like it was confusing, right? So there's that part of it. I think the thing that's missing from the analysis we've got in right here is, who are these people making this Arkham Asylum one? And so one of the companies involved is the Department Studios. They are a spinoff of the Department, and these folks have been around. And just disclosure, Hamish Jenkinson of the Department and Department Studios, he's speaking at the Next Stage in January. He's going to be out there. Indeed, we've actually been tracking this one since 2019. This is not a fresh, out of nowhere project. This has been in the works for some time. They were going to talk about it at Here 2020. It was going to be a surprise. We had on the stage. We didn't get to do that routine. It was one of the things that made me very sad about pandemic. So there's all of that going on with it. But the department, Department Studios is now their creative arm, spinoff of the immersive agency that they've built. And they've have some huge brands they've worked with, like FIFA. They just did a giant projection mapping thing with BMW on the BMW's headquarters. And these guys can trace themselves back to the London Old Vic tunnels. So they helped is the wrong word. Like they set that up. So a lot of the London underground immersive scene that kind of bubbled up over the past decade, these guys were part of that from the beginning. So there is pedigree here in terms of the producers of the event. When it comes to the actual creative, I have no knowledge, not even like NDA knowledge that I can't share. I have no knowledge on like who's actually doing the creative. I will say that when Myco2 did a Arkham Asylum haunt on the Warner Brothers lot a couple of years ago, it was a hell of a lot of fun. And that was just a traditional haunt with a lot of performers in it. So I think there's a chance here. And in the article Catherine found from the stage, which has a whole paywall, they noted that there's a tour possibility here. So I don't know, and that confuses me because I don't know how you tour one of these shows. That's fascinating in of itself. Like, does that mean they're building this like on arenas or whatever? I'm not sure. Or are they finding lots of spaces, or they just intend to have it pop up in a number of cities, but in a serialized fashion. There's plenty of projection chops that it isn't like people have been doing this for like 3 years. These are people who have definitely been doing it for like a decade plus. So we can set aside any of those fears. I just want to
Right.
that. Yeah.
Because I think why Blake and I are here for everyone's entertainment is that it's not a question of necessarily. I have no concerns with who's doing what and who's involved. If these are if Noah's explained at length here, and rightfully so, these are professionals. These are people who are doing great things that we all should be excited about. I'm just simply trying to make a point of engage. What communities are we always trying to engage in? Something that we always kind of talk about, and I think all of these kind of, for lack of a better word, fringe entertainment venues, like escape rooms and immersive theater or other site specific things that you don't go to a movie theater or a playhouse to go see, is always about how do we reach new audiences, how do we get them in, like what makes them excited enough to leave their home and try something new. And I think, because Blake was a little kind of like, of all of the, things to maybe pick to do.
It's a choice. I can be my own Grinch here. Thank you very much. I am frankly baffled by the League decision. While definitely I see your point, and I think that it might be nice to expand immersive theater to a traditional video game audience, I think that secret cinema of any company might be one of the trickiest companies to pull off, considering their work. Their work is so LARPy. It really is about taking a role and embodying that role within a world, which absolutely does not mesh in my mind with the style of League of Legends. And I say this as someone who has put not a lot of hours into League, but I have played some League in my time, and I have very close friends who are deep into the League world. The game itself is nearly plotless. I mean, we can talk about, the Netflix special, but that is building out one subplot out of several that get built out in very siloed different stories of the worlds that each champion is from, that are told mostly through like animatics to promote new skins in the game or lore dumps with new characters. This is not a plot heavy game or a world heavy game. The game has, one map it's typically played on. It strikes me as just artistically speaking, this is going to have to really be built out of this show that no one has great affection for yet to build out its story, because there's just not really the coherence of content, in my opinion, to build it out from the game. And while certainly diehard fans are going to be interested in getting that lore dump, there is part of me that wonders, are the people who are that deep into it plentiful enough in Los Angeles at this point in time in order to really build out an audience for the run of this show? And I guess only time will tell. I know there is a huge League audience that is very passionate about it.
What are the tickets again?
They're $70 for general admission and $140 for VIP. Actually, $70.
70. Wow.
And it's actually closer to 80 after fees, I believe.
I gotta like, yeah.
But these people are already traveling. The video game community is already traveling for experiences. They're going to video game conferences to play with other people. I had a cousin who this year, months ago, was, plays like, let's just say World of Warcraft or one of those war games. And she went to meet up with other people. She plays all around the world and went out to some place to do that. Like, she got on a plane and traveled. It was a trip she made.
Well, but so, that's to play with each other and socialize with each other in that context. And I think, kind of to Blake's point about, like, yes, there are people who are into the lore of League. I mean, the funny thing is, like, my major affiliation with League is the KD8 song from Beat Saber, right? Which I didn't even know was a League of Legends thing until it was explained to me that, like, every year they create a bunch of holograms of characters and then get real musicians to voice them. And I actually started to find that super charming, and also mildly baffling. But this is this is a bold, the cartoon already is a bold IP extension for Riot. And
that's something I wanted to jump off of, and something Blake kind of brought up a second ago too, is this is a very cartoony world. Most of the worlds that Secret Cinema have done have been at least a little bit more grounded in realism, but like the characters in League of Legends are like wild, weird characters. Like, you got like a giant robot, you got some aliens, you got some people in like outrageous costumes. I think one of the characters on the art, I think, is known for like having like a truly massive like gun thing going on. And then I know we're also comparing this to Arkham Asylum, which is based off a comic, but Batman does feel a bit more grounded and seems like it makes sense for like an immersive world versus something that's like in this kind of cartoonier vein, if that makes any sense at all. As a fine line, go for it. But
I'm just going to be a tiny bit savage for a second. You know what this reminds me of more than anything, which I will admit, I loved it to pieces. But I gotta say this feels like the Alita Battle Angel experience to me. That had so much pedigree behind it. That was so well executed. But at the end of the day, this was a weird property that had a really hard time finding its audience. And tickets, at least in New York City, got cheap fast. And, if you, to your point, Patrick, James Cameron has a huge following. There's a lot of anime people out there. This was an upcoming blockbuster hit. But I just worry about that sense of connecting to its audience here.
I mean, there's this whole thing that's been going on where, and it's a fascinating strategy, right? Netflix is monetizing these things that at Comic-Con would be free. And obviously, because these are really expensive to put people through, right? Like,
but a Comic-Con activation would be what, like 5 minutes outside of the wild, like, Westworld one they did, which was
typically you wait in line 2 hours to do walk through like 10 minutes of feet.
In all fairness, the first thing I ever covered for No Pro back in fall of 2018 was a multi-hour Comic-Con activation in which I was inducted into a cult. Yeah. So
I remember Josh Randall being on stage at Midsummer Scream one year and talking about how for an activation he did at Comic-Con, like the throughput math was something like $600 per guest. Right, was what it was costing them.
It was a fascinating panel, and all of them they were like, "No, all of these things just lost money, like immense amounts of money."
But the thing is like, but they didn't lose money. Much the same way the post office didn't lose money; they cost money.
I get okay. That's
like
fair.
they cost a lot of money in order to make a real impression. And what's interesting about Netflix's approach with the Secret Cinema activation, with this activation, with the Bridgerton, with all that they're doing, Stranger Things activation, is they are seeing this as at least a break even. But I also think it's part of their strategy around consumer products, and it's a revenue stream for them, because how else is Netflix going to increase revenue? Like, get more people to sign up? I'm sorry, but like everyone's already given their cousin their sign up, right? Like there's almost no growth left in subscriber base for Netflix, at least for another 16 years before some of those and chill babies have to start paying their weight. But like that's a really long-term strategy for consumer growth. Whereas, making a lot of merch around Stranger Things, partnering up with the League on this IP, and then creating events. This is good. I think I'm on Blake's side here a little bit. Like if you had told me this was $40, I would have been like, oh man, what's that? Like 3 skins in the game? Like, I don't know. I'm old, so $70. I'm like, that's a AAA boxed video game.
I will say though, so from my point of view, I got the pre-sale email from Secret Cinema. I'm on their list from Stranger Things, and I bought a ticket today. I have no familiarity with League of Legends. I am going purely off of my experience with the Stranger Things drive-in. So for what that is worth in terms of Blake, and I think obviously Blake, well, I think all of you are much more knowledgeable about this particular property than I am, but I'm curious to see not just in terms of how they're going to find their audience, like what Patrick's saying, people traveling, people that are deep in and loyal and into this world. I wonder how many people they are going to find that are purely new audiences that don't have any relationship to this IP, that are going purely off of other experiences with Secret Cinema or what they've heard about Secret Cinema.
So probably not Secret Cinema, probably Netflix. Other Netflix experiences, I think, is what they.
Wait, I've got kind of. I want to jump off something Noah was saying and ask Laura, like, do you have any? You bought a ticket for this, but do you have any inclination to like continue to dive deeper into this world and learn anything about it before you go to the show, or you just be like, this is a cool immersive experience in LA. We haven't had Secret Cinema. Stranger Things was good. I'm just gonna go, or is this like an actual path into that like property for you?
I think that's a great question. And so I think there's 2 things here probably worth noting. So no, it sounds like you have more knowledge and information around Secret Cinema's role with Stranger Things. The way that it was presented, at least via their marketing, to me, it seemed very much like this was a partnership between Netflix and Secret Cinema and Fever was simply the ticketing platform. So maybe I am very mistaken on the details around that, but the relationship that I have, if you can call it that, with Secret Cinema thus far is that I very much think of the Stranger Things experience as a collaboration between Netflix and Secret Cinema. So that really was my draw to this. And Kevin, to your question, in general, I do try to go in as cold as possible with a lot of these things. And so I mean, I'm happy to report back on this later. I feel like my instinct right now is to do nothing or next to nothing ahead of it and just to go. And then to see if I am drawn into the world, to what extent do I then dive deeper after the experience. But in a way, I love not having this relationship ahead of time. With Stranger Things, I was I was definitely a fan, definitely an enthusiast, had seen all of the episodes, some of them a couple times. So, but I really enjoy these types of opportunities where I have no preconceived notions. I have no loyalties whatsoever. And so I'm sure I will miss things because of that. But I also think it's a unique opportunity to go in so cold and to really see how the experience lands from that point of view.
Perfect. And I imagine we'll have an episode later because I know I'm going to buy a ticket. I imagine Noah's going to attend as well, and then any other LA folks to kind of chat through it.
They just, full disclosure, like they haven't set us up with any kind, like, we've got ways to talk to Netflix and we'll find out if there's a way for us to get access. But if we can't get press access, like I don't have $70 running around right now to go. Like that's the thing. It's like, I love this stuff. And like, if I didn't do this as a job, like a lot of this stuff I'd be completely priced out of. And, to sort of Patrick's point about, will this be attractive to League fans? I think it's like, depending on which kind of League fans. I think the kind of League fan who like goes to a con and like cosplays, I think this is perfect for them. Right. Like cosplay inspiration a go-go. Also, the costumes better be better than cosplay. Otherwise, we're going to hear about it online, like in a real way. But I think this point Laura's bringing up is interesting to me because there's a whole fans of Netflix, which Netflix is trying to develop that as a thing. Like they just had their own fan con, Tadum. What a name.
Wait, no, I'm sorry. What was that?
It was called Tadum. Like,
the noise
like the noise. But right? They called their fan con to I mean, honestly, the people I know at Netflix are not part of the thing that did that. So like, somebody somewhere. And they ran it all over the weekend, and it was a blizzard of content announcements. It's when the Sandman trailer came out. Right. But that's probably like the only thing I remember. But that's the thing is like Netflix's play is to have something for absolutely everyone. And they don't care if you miss 90% of what they're doing because they just need 10% of the global audience to pay attention to 10% at any given time. And once in a while, a Squid Game happens. Now, let me tell you, if they had known that Squid Game was going to take off the way they did, there just would have been, the city would be on fire right now with people demanding to go, right? So like, they're probably sitting there going like, oh man, we picked the wrong thing. So
if I can engage in a minute, just so long as we're kind of talking about financials and marketing strategy, if I can engage in a moment of baseless speculation here.
Please do.
The $70 price point actually struck me as a little bit odd in that I think it's on the low end of things. Because just looking quickly at what this is going to have, we're going to have a Secret Cinema style, set design. That's a huge upfront cost, along with costumes and actors. There's going to be a full digital pre-show experience. Everyone gets a bespoke character profile with backstory and missions. The set I'm seeing is 25,000 square feet. There is the full 360 audiovisual experience. At that cost, $70 sounds almost closer to a break-even point.
I'm
And
Laura,
imagining
do we know how long
probably
the run is? And Laura, you may be able to see that
it's
on
about a
the
2-hour
pre-sale.
run.
No, I mean the
It's
the
until
run of the show.
yeah, it's November 21st through December 19th.
So this
Okay.
is it's just a few weeks. Also,
This-
this assumes something. Do we know where it is in, or is it the
No,
secret
when
location?
you buy a ticket, it
Mm,
still doesn't tell you. I actually can pull up the language, but it is something along the lines of like, I actually thought it was quite funny because it says, do not use this location for your map, for your GPS. But it's it says, let's see here. Indoor, okay, here's the full description, which I think is amazing. Indoor, centrally located venue in LA. Do not use these map directions. Central LA, Los Angeles, California.
I wonder if they're using the expo hall, like because the thing is like that could explain, and that would also limit how long the run is, or it could be kind of an arena show setup. And just because like if they're in a non-traditional venue, and we've seen this over and over again. I mean, Impact Museums and the other folks who
Lighthouse
do
Immersive.
yeah, Lighthouse Immersive, but there's the Lighthouse is like they have another partner too, and beyond Lighthouse, like that together they form Lighthouse. But like the Lighthouse here in LA, which is the old Amoeba space, like they had to push back their opening by a couple of days because they couldn't get the permitting done right. But like if they're using like the convention center, they're going to be able to like get away with it, much easier. So it's all fascinating to me.
So
Also, I'm noticing just really quick, there is a premium ticket that we're not talking about that is $140 that one of the line items is additional storylines, private character meets, and missions become available for
Oh,
an
wow.
extra $70. So in many ways, using this Netflix model, they got Laura for her $70, but then for the people who are into this, the pay to play model works.
Even me, who's not that into it, I'm probably going to buy the VIP ticket just to see, because that's probably a better experience is getting some of that private stuff or the more intimate stuff and paying for it. And I'm into immersive, haven't been like a big one in a while, so let's go.
So basically, though, what we're saying here is that the financials are wacky here. We can't make heads or tails of this.
Very wacky.
And we're, the most inside baseball of inside baseball people. What is starting to be my creeping suspicion is that both Netflix and Riot have about as much money as the Catholic Church. They are loaded, and so there almost strikes me, is there potentially marketing funding being diverted to this?
Sure. I mean,
cinema
there's no
acting
doubt
as the main kind of profit taker from this.
There's no, I mean, that could be like Secret Cinemas, like, getting the cut. I mean, when you think about, look, JFI right now, they're doing Creep. They're taking a week off to do I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's Amazon. They're getting the Amazon activation money pumped into the Ghostlight. They're going to like reskin it a little bit. So it's not going to be exactly the same, but they're not going to tear down everything. They're just going to like redo some set deco and then put Creep back on. Right. Like this isn't, it's not brain surgery, but I got to imagine, I have no knowledge of the actual numbers here, but that's pretty savvy. And I got to imagine it's helping them do better than break even on Creep. So there's definitely, there's definitely a way in which there's marketing money being pumped into this, no doubt. I think the question is, the play has got to be, and the thing that could make this good is if they've poured their creative in a real way, if they've made something fantastic, then it could bolster the IP. So Patrick, I think it's almost like a reverse situation from what you're talking about, where like the IP is going to drive these people who are totally into it. I don't know, aside from the cosplay side of things, how deep the fan love of the League lore is, but I could see kind of to Laura's point, if the creative here is really great, then this could help mainstream the League IP in the exact way that the cartoon is supposed to mainstream the League IP. And we don't usually see this happen. I can't. The first thing that comes to mind is like back in the 80s were like Transformers and G.I. Joe, but those were just done tabula rasa. Those were done from basically scratch. Like G.I. Joe was a brand, but it didn't really exist.
I think we've been on this for a while, so I think we probably do want to move on. I want to make
Yeah.
make one
We
point
could
here.
talk about this forever.
Yeah,
We barely talked about Arkham.
No. Well, I'm going to ask. I have one more question. I actually look in the Secret Cinema site, and it does make a point that the general admission ticket and the premium admission ticket, it seems to cast you in a different role based on which one you buy, which is an interesting way to maybe tie that into the show. And back to that, we were talking about people traveling for an immersive show. Would people travel for League of Legends? And I guess my question to each of you is just a one-word answer. Like, would you travel for Arcane? Would you travel to go to Arkham? Or would you travel for neither? And Laura, we'll start with you.
I already had sort of jokingly said to my partner that we have to go to London next fall. So with the new Punch Drunk show, and again, like I am not a Batman fanatic at all. I might be more in the minority in this case, but I do feel like I'm someone who will go see a production or experience a production just based on past creative by that company. So I am absolutely considering, is it possible for me to get to London next fall specifically for those two shows?
All right. And then Patrick, would you travel for either one of those?
At this point, neither.
Okay. And then Blake.
I'm kicking myself that I'm already booked to go to London this summer. Let's hope that there's some previews. Otherwise, I'll be making another trip to London sometime pretty soon.
All right, so that's a yes. And then I would think I would probably travel to London, but like Laura would be to hit both the Burnt City and Arkham rather than like just traveling for Arkham. And then Noah, we'll end with you.
The good news for me is that I don't have to worry about traveling. They'll take me back soon enough.
So is that a yes? Is that a no?
Yes. If I can make it happen, particularly because it's the twofer with Burnt City, which I do not have tickets for. I mean, this is the thing. I'm broke, so I'm broke. So here's the thing. I will not be buying tickets at the end of this month in much the same way that I didn't buy tickets to the Burnt City when they came up because I'm broke. I'm not buying. Hold on. I'm not buying a Star Cruiser because I'm broke. If I had,
also that takes a fortune.
It takes a fortune. If I had, and if I have to look at these as purchasing decisions, right? Like if you said, "Hey Noah, here is $3,000, and you can only use it to travel for immersive stuff. What are you going to do with it next year?" I'll be like, obviously Star Wars, duh, right? Like that's simple with me. The other thing is like there is a chance that the Arkham's gonna travel. I will say the fact that Burnt City and Arkham are both going to be in London at the same time, and I have zero idea if there'll ever be a version of Burnt City anywhere but London, that makes it very tempting. And in a world where I can make the math work and, go there, even if it's like, late winter 2023, well, after everything's kind of been running for a while, because I'm not going to be part of the initial land rush. In a heartbeat.
I just think it's really telling that everyone decided to go to Arkham to also go see.
Because they're in the same town.
Show. But the question was,
we all picked the third option, which was go see the Punch Drunk show.
Let's say that Arkham was in like Reykjavik. Would you still go?
Ooh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's
I would
Reykjavik.
just go to
Yes.
That'd be
Iceland,
dope,
right?
right? No, let's do
Yeah, I
let's do
kinda wanna
something.
go to
Okay, let's
Reykjavik.
let's change the stakes a little bit. Let's say it was just in Boston. Nothing against Boston. Boston's like totally fine, but it's a normal American city that has, you know, it doesn't have like a whole bunch of immersive stuff going on the regular. And let's say there's no ART show going on, right, to draw through. Like, would you guys, and there's no Punch Drunk show happening, right? Like, if it was just there, I might still go to I would go to Arkham if it was like in the States and didn't,
Yeah,
you know, yeah. It's
and I
it's
would
that
travel. I'd
crossing the
probably travel
London
for
thing.
Arkham, but I wouldn't travel for a secret cinema. I don't think.
I mean, I haven't traveled for a secret cinema. Like, I've had multiple opportunities, you know, like the closest I've gotten is like, you know, hearing about Empire Strikes Back after the fact and being like, God damn it.
Okay, so what we're saying is drinks at Pennyworth's at that weird immersive bar for Batman in London after we go to Arkham.
I believe so. Yes. Yes. Well, yeah.
And on that note, I actually have to jet. I had just about 45 minutes tonight, and I will let you get to the actual reviewing.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Blake, to have a very nerdy debate about immersive and then get real inside baseball. All right, this is part 2 of Review Crew for Wednesday, October 13th. We're actually going to pick up with the things we saw this week, and we're going to take a pivot away from the nerdiness of Arcane and Arkham Asylum, and we're going to jump to Laura to talk about Wayfinder.
Yeah, wayfinding.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's talk about signage, people. No, don't go. This is actually, I'm really excited to talk about this. I mean, this is sort of different kind of nerding out, in my opinion, and I'm delighted. This is Wayfinding is the name of the show. It's by an American artist. She's a multiform conceptual artist named Chloë Bass. This is currently being presented at the Pulitzer Arts Foundation in St. Louis. I was there recently for a visit and got to experience this in person. And one thing that I want to highlight for people is that I think there's so much that you can get out of this show remotely. So I'll back up for a minute and give you an overview. This is at the Pulitzer Arts Foundation, which is a beautiful museum in St. Louis, but this wayfinding signage is distributed on the grounds. So it is outdoors, and there's 4 sort of main sections. It's divided up into 4 sections, and each one has a beautiful, large, mirrored billboard style sign. And what Chloë Bass is doing is, these are very poetic. The text on these signs, and some of them are very small. They're almost like hidden in these different gardens or sort of little nooks in the landscape. And then again, there's kind of an anchor, large mirrored billboard for each section. And these have different sort of very emotional, very resonant, very poetic bits of text. And these are, so she's sort of inverting this more traditional wayfinding signage from this very, kind of utilitarian, often very subconscious or unconscious reflex that we have in the way that we use it, and that it's this external way that we source information, that we orient ourselves in the physical world, and sort of turning it on its head into this very resonant poetic experience, which winds up being this internal probing dialogue about wayfinding for ourselves in our lives through different situations with other people. And it is a fascinating presentation because, and this is why I'm saying this is still, I think, something that can be very resonant for people remotely. On the Pulitzer Arts Foundation website, you can see examples of this. And for example, one of the mirrored billboards just says, "How much of love is attention?" Another one is, how much of belief is encounter. So these are just to give you kind of a sense of what the narrative is. And then what goes along with this, it's hosted on SoundCloud, is a roughly 30-minute audio piece. I listened to this separately. This was not something I listened to while I was exploring the signage. And it is absolutely fascinating. She is combining text from multiple sources. So you actually have some Google and Yelp reviews of the Pulitzer. There's quotes from a local St. Louis city government program, kind of, legalese around this government program, contractual information. Text from landscape architecture teaching guides, and reports by the National Institutes of Health. And then plus Chloë Bass's personal narrative. So she's interweaving these things in ways, these seem like completely unrelated sources of information. How do these work together in conjunction? And there is a written transcript of this audio text and, of course, the audio itself. And I listened to this after I'd seen the signs in person. And it is such a strangely, how do I say this? Like, she really is exploring how do we use language and language's negative space to mold our own psychological environments. So, for example, like, how are we creating immaterial landmarks to navigate different situations and different people and moments in our lives in the way that we also do with wayfinding signage? I think it is such a fascinating exploration about just the concept of wayfinding and how she is inverting it again on a psychological and emotional level. So I want to stop there because I realize this one's a little bit more complicated and hard to describe. And so I want to see if there's any clarity needed about what I just said.
I actually do have a question.
Please.
It first starts with kind of the scope of this, because I'm curious, because I'm looking at some images, which maybe we can describe the actual foundation a little bit. But was this the entire foundation? Was this part of it and some of it outside? Was it all outside? How was this building used?
So it's all outside. So there's a couple of different, there's two, like, I would say, significant gardens, and they're on opposite sides actually of the building itself. So this is not inside the building. This is a completely outdoor experience. And again, some of these, you sort of feel like a bit of a scavenger hunt element to this. Some of the signs are very small, and like I said, they're kind of tucked away. So you're having to find, there's no map of where the signs are. And so you're just maneuvering around these different gardens and spaces and looking for the signage, which is, again, all very evocative. It's more kind of internal musings and questions around how we orient ourselves psychologically and emotionally. It's very intimate, it's very personal, and yet Bass is so skilled that it feels incredibly universal. And there's repetition too between some of the signs. There's elements that sort of repeat, but she has tweaked the language. So it's just a really interesting way of presenting how we orient ourselves and the very nature of how we find our way through life from a psychological standpoint and not simply a physical standpoint in actual physical space. Patrick, did that answer your question?
No, it did, because I think that was very helpful, because for those listening who might not have Googled it at this point, so essentially, like, the images of the foundation kind of remind me, it has a very Frank Lloyd Wright aesthetic, but if you only used cement for everything, and if you're looking at it from above, it looks like the building itself is kind of U-shaped, and in the arms of the U there's kind of like a reflecting pool, and then Laura, you said, it's this beautiful, like, massive kind of garden space surrounding it, and I'm kind of then curious. So you're hunting and pecking. Like, did you yourself create the narrative as you explore? Not narrative. Did you? Let me say that again. Did you like begin to piece together everything, these themes, these ideas, these connections yourself, or were you supposed to be using, as you said, that audio component to maybe guide you through everything at large?
That's a great question. And so the audio component, I would be so curious to talk to someone who listened to it during. I would find that, I mean, there's no wrong way to experience this, but because she is incorporating, so she's linking health disorders. So, for example, one that might seem quite apparent to people is Alzheimer's. So she's taking from the National Institutes of Health some of these reports and these health disorders that make a lot of sense in terms of questions around how you orient yourself, and again is interweaving in this incredibly fascinating way that I find so challenging to describe. She's linking that with these like actual architectural wayfinding tenants, and then again Yelp and Google reviews of the Pulitzer in ways that are in no way obvious, and yet it flows so seamlessly, and it challenges your idea of, again, how you might orient yourself in life through non-traditional wayfinding elements. And it has, I cannot stop thinking about this installation. So I did not listen to it immediately following either. I think it would be confusing to listen to the audio piece. They did have a QR code on the billboard, a separate billboard that's just about the show, a traditional sign. I would find it actually really distracting and kind of disorienting to listen to that during the show. So I literally, and I went to, and this is an important detail for anyone that might actually be in St. Louis, I actually went and experienced the show on a day that the museum itself was closed. So again, this is completely exterior. It's not even in the interior kind of garden area. And it's completely open to the public. The museum itself is free, but anyone that's just in the area on any day at any time could go and experience this show, which is also true. I mean, that's symbolic of wayfinding in general. This is something that's always available to you if you're in the area to go and see and experience and help you to orient yourself in some way. But I think the audio component is best experienced completely separate after the fact, and initially just going and searching for the signs and reading the signs and what they evoke in you and what lands and how they work together or how they don't work together.
And I think for people who aren't in Missouri or able to make it out there, the website actually, they have a few of the signs up, and I think it does a good job of kind of capturing the elements of the show and kind of what it's at least playing with, if not getting like the full impact of it. So you can check that out. You get the link in the review rundown from Laura's piece on wayfinding.
Yep.
And now we're going to make a quick jump because we are deep into the show and we have one show covered. So Noah, do you want to talk about Ascension?
I will jump in and talk about Ascension. So this is a new play, and I mean that in the total sense of this is like a brand new play from the Echo Theater Company here in Los Angeles. And the director is Ahmad Best, who folks probably know as an actor in the Star Wars prequels of one of the major characters. And the playwright is a cat from I think he's from Las Vegas because that's what his That's his Twitter profile when I was like trying to find his Twitter profile. He was like Vegas was in his name. And that cat's name is
DG Watson.
DG Watson. Yeah, I'm just pulling it up. So the player is DG Watson. The director is Ahmad Best. The company is Echo Theater Company. It's playing at the Atwater Village Theater in Los Angeles. Echo Theater Company did a Zoom play over the course of the pandemic called Under the Freeways in Los Angeles, which I thought was very, very well written, but kind of had some like, issues around just kind of like what was the audience doing it in and whatnot. Like kind of the structure was a little off. This one's really interesting because Ascension was originally planned as a Zoom play. And as pandemic moved into its new phase, it was transitioned into a live stage play. I feel like the first act works a lot stronger than the second act does. The setup is you get in, you sit down, you're in a normal theater setup. They actually did a curtain speech that said, hey, we want you to like interact. We want you to talk back to the performers. We were not expressly told that we couldn't get up and move around. They kind of like, relied upon us to hold to the social contract. We were expressly told we could talk, but we weren't told anything else. I think everyone just assumed we couldn't move. And at no point was it obvious that we were supposed to move. So what's interesting here is it's a sci-fi piece that has some interesting thought experiments going on around, incarceration, around the kind of this idea of, memory and identity, and definitely some thoughts around agency. And the whole thing is posited as we as the audience are interacting with this young woman who wakes up trapped inside like a sleeping pod, like you'd find on like, like a spaceship and like Alien or whatever. And she's able to hear us. We're able to hear her. There's an AI running the ship. And for parts of it, we're able to help her navigate what she needs to get out of the pod and then kind of move the story forward. And then at points, she flashes back to, someone else's memories. It appears she's getting someone else's memories. And it's the designer of these pods. And they came up with a concept now, like during pandemic era. So this kind of like flashback, flash forward, it kind of takes place in like 3 different eras. There's a lot going on, but at least for the first act, it's pretty cohesive, and our role and what we can do and some of the ideas that are laid out are pretty compelling. And so much of that has to do with just some pretty solid dynamics and dramatics on the writing, a really good cast that just keeps it grounded despite the fact that it's like this like big sci-fi thoughts and this wacky structure that's going on, and this experiment of, and the really difficult experiment of, here's 40 or 50 people who have the right to shout at the characters and who at times are asked to do things like call that number, right? Like call that phone number. And like it starts to get incorporated in, and they start playing with the audience in this way. The second act comes around and they start kind of layering some more stuff in. It gets a little meta. At one point, one of the characters, starts chastising us, for like, not taking a more active role, or for just sort of wallowing in the sadness that the character's going through. Like, we're basically told like we're bad people for watching this person suffer. And that stuff lands in a weird way with me, just because like, well, we could just leave, or we could just tell like the actors to go, screw themselves, like in character. But it definitely is like, you would be violating the social contract. So it feels a little like, this doesn't really work, and kind of throws it out of the world. But when it holds to the central conceits and holds to some of the drama and holds to kind of the moral questions of, hey, if we could just, drop someone who was going to be incarcerated into cryosleep instead, like, wouldn't that be better? Right. Just things like that. Like, what are we doing with like warehousing people when it comes to incarceration? Like and there's that part of it, but there's also the idea that they're playing with, that I think they're really playing with, all of the technology we have. How is it being used in ways that are not intended by the creators or aren't necessarily a real social good, but are making some people a lot of money. So as a fictionalized exploration of, figures like, the head of Amazon and a few other companies, there's definitely some of that is in the mix here. And when the writing's doing that, it's really good. When the writing is keeping to when the structure of the piece is keeping a relatively straightforward playfulness with the audience, really good. When it starts to kind of go into a meta direction, in my review, I said, and this image came to mind when I was there that night, particularly during the second act, of just, when you've got a Jenga going and, it keeps on getting taller and taller and taller, and you're just wondering, like, when is it going to fall down? And then there's that one piece that's just like painfully out of place. And you're like, oh, if that piece was just not put in wrong, we'd be okay. Definitely gets that vibe going on as it goes on. It never collapses under its own weight, which is an impressive feat. But by the end, it feels like it's really trying to be two different plays. And I'd be happier if it was like trying to be a little tighter. That all said, they're also trying to do something that's pretty difficult, which is inject some interactivity and a very particular form of interactivity into a traditional theater setting with a very traditional theater audience, and bring them along for the journey. And that's super commendable and is an approach we don't see all that often. I think in large part, partly because I think the people who are interested in, immersive and interactive stuff, or maybe, equally interested in doing work in non-traditional spaces, but also because, it's harder. It's harder to take a black box and perforate the fourth wall and not have the whole thing come careening out of control.
Well, and it's just to maybe, I feel like you maybe kind of mentioned this, but just to maybe clarify it, how successful did you feel this format's attempt to engage with the audience worked?
I mean, during the first act, I thought spot on, right? Like up until a point, about a quarter of the way through the second act where they went meta on us. And the thing is like, it was opening night. I'm a critic, so I'm not going to lean fully into like my full player mode. Because again, opening night, not press preview night, where it would have been like, oh, there's only other press here, right? But like, there was a character that was basically like, well, they don't care about you. The audience, these people watching us, they don't call us the audience, but like those people don't care about you, to the main character. Like they're just enjoying your suffering. And all I could think of was I just wanted to shout at the guy, like, oh, what are you afraid of? Right? Like I wanted to start heckling the character. But again, this weird state where it's like, well, like then I'm throwing it all out of balance because again, they're with an audience, right? Like, and they're with an audience that are like at various degrees. But I do think they also, they tempted us into things. Like they baited us with, one sequence where one of the characters goes into protest mode and they like start asking some loaded political questions, wanting to see if the audience is going to like take the bait. So I'm very curious if there are folks who do run in and just totally take the bait. But it was definitely awkward for me where I'm sitting there going like, well, I'm a critic. I'm in a critic seat. People could tell because like I'd had my name put on it. I've, like my social role is prescribed here. And yet at the same time, the show is kind of edging up, but at no point did they tell us, please don't like run onto the stage. And I'm just like, man, some night, particularly like some of the more active LA, immersive kids, they might just be like, oh no, man, like, let's go. Right. And things could very quickly go off the rails, which maybe they're ready for, but I really got the sense that they're not ready for it to go fully off the rails, but I could be wrong. Maybe they are.
I'm actually still unclear as to what you believe this meta element, what maybe the intended goal was, even if it didn't deliver. I guess I'm still not understanding how.
I'm kind of a little, well, that's because like I don't know what they were trying to like get at there, right? Like there's a way in which, like, you know, we were ultimately endowed, and I'm trying not to spoil it, right? You know, like who we were in relationship to the main character was not given to us at the start, but was revealed. And I thought that was done very well, right? Like late in the first act, it was pretty clear who we were to her. But then in the second act, relatively early on, one of the other characters basically kind of casts us back in the role of the audience, even though we've already been like uncasted from that role, and basically just told, you know, we're told, the lead character is told that we are just there to enjoy her suffering, right? Which is a very meta commentary on what an audience does, right? Like we just watch these characters' little lives. They're not real to us, right? She's been like, you know, you're not real to them, right? And the temptation, and then the characters are like, am I real to you, right? And we're like, oh yeah, like almost like a Tinkerbell thing. It's like, yes, Tinkerbell, we believe in you.
Clap,
and like
clap, everybody,
clap everybody, right? And you know, there's a way in which we could just go like, all like, oh no, you guys are fake. Like, yeah, you're totally fake. Like you're just actors on the stage. And like, and I don't know, I was tempted, but it felt like if I had gone that way, I would have been the asshole there. Even though all I would have been doing is like, oh, you're going to ask us, you're going to note that we're at a show. You're going to basically say like, you're just a character in a show to them, right? And it's like, why are you doing this? You're literally throwing us out of the drama to just comment on the fact that like we're watching a show. Like you are deliberately deconstructing that. Where do you want to go with that? And no one else rose to the bait. And honestly, I think to some degree, like we didn't rise to the bait because we were more interested in the characters as characters. We were more interested in the ideas that were inside the drama than in examining the structure of what it means to watch characters suffer. Right? Like it just wasn't that interesting of a question in the moment. And if we want to go like a real deep read, it felt like imposter syndrome, like raising its head, like the production itself being like, oh, are we really this good? Well, let's talk about the fact that like this is just a show, right? And like that's why the image of a Jenga tower came to mind, because it wasn't necessary or needed and just kind of confused, right? It was just like, why are we doing this right now when we've got, you know, a meditation on the prison industrial complex, a meditation on identity, a meditation on technology's pervasive roles in our lives and the unintended consequences thereof, right? Like there's all of these ideas, and then to throw meta in on top of it, it's like, why are we going there?
I mean, that is something that Immersive loves to do, is pile in a bunch of ideas and then go meta. So it's at least
it's consistent
there.
Yeah. And often the thing that happens in the sophomore show of a company, right? Like,
very true.
Like it's literally the second place they go. Well, what if we go meta? And it's for me, it's never enjoyable. I think often because I always get the sense of, you don't really want to have this conversation right now. Like you don't want us to auto critique this in the middle of it. Right.
Meta stuff takes a really delicate hand, I think, to actually enact well. I think lots of people try it, and it's like you run the risk of confusing your audience, breaking your show in the middle of it, and all those problems you've talked about.
Yeah, I feel like it's a siren that every immersive creator, like, you know, like just if you're feeling the urge to go meta, just lash yourself to the mast, have your crew stuff cotton in their ears, and if you want to listen to the song, that's fine. But whatever you do, do not land on the island. Don't land on Meta Island.
All right, and now we're going to step away from Meta Island and go into virtual reality with Patrick.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of brief on this one because this is an experience that No Proscenium has covered in the past to a certain extent. But last week, I mean, excuse me, I went to see with some other correspondents and friends Dr. Crumb's School for Disobedient Pets. This is from Adventure Lab. It's a VR experience. Essentially, the premise is you and up to it's 8 players in total, so you and up to 7 other people are cast in the role of this agency that is going in undercover to Dr. Crumb's school as, critters, hamsters, cats, bunnies, things like that, because the evil Dr. Crumb is building a doomsday device that is going to destroy the world. And the only way to stop him is to work together to complete obstacles and puzzles that he's put in the path to prevent anyone from tampering with his doomsday weapon to succeed. And honestly, at the end of the day, this is just a really delightfully wacky, zany, and easygoing escape room like experience full of shenanigans that will keep you laughing. um Essentially what happens with it is that it's available to almost anyone with a VR headset, except people with a PlayStation headset. There's cross-platform engagement here, which I think is desperately needed for a majority of live VR experiences, because as we've kind of touched upon time and time again in a lot of the things we cover, it's like, oh, would you like to do this VR experience? Well, this one requires a gaming computer, and that's before you've bought a really expensive headset. So I really think it's cool that if your friends are maybe more sophisticated with their VR technology than you are, and you're just like me and just like, I'm happy to be on the quest. Sure, Facebook is stealing my data, but it sure is easy to use. You're in luck there. Eh, Essentially, you go through, I think, at least 3, if not maybe more, kind of like challenge areas that require teamwork to work together. Um, you always got to be constantly communicating. You've got to be like being able to look around and see some of the characters, depending on which animal they decide to play, have special abilities which could, you know, g- act as a boon to the group as a whole if they're paying attention and they communicate, oh, hey, I think I see a secret path over there. Maybe that will help us. Um, and I think that's kind of a really cool thing. What makes this experience, I think, is that you interact with a whole cast of different characters, but in every session of Dr. Crumb's, they're played by one performer. And uh, hilarious, just a really great time. The show is typically all ages appropriate, which I think is also another great idea. But what I really enjoy is how, if they get a sense of maybe how everyone's joking, maybe it'll skew a little more adult, never inappropriately or totally like out of line, but if you're an all adult audience, they definitely kind of open up the humor to still be for you, but nevertheless safe and appropriate. And it really just made the most of it. And this is something that I've seen on Twitter talked about. I think it was Brandon Powers who pointed this out, that unfortunately, it feels like VR is going the way of all video games, where it's, first person shooters all the time. That's the only way, and that's the only experience that can ever be had. And I think it's just great to stop and celebrate Dr. Crumbs and things like Welcome to Respite and the Under Percents the Tempest, that have these live components that are doing something more with VR rather than shooting something, whether that's zombies or being in a spaceship or something.
Because that live component is really what makes it feel more like an immersive show and not just a video game, right? Like that is the kind of crux of the kind of
Yeah, because
issue
that
there.
person is definitely the actor is serving as the game master, kind of giving you instructions and guiding you through. Like I to compare it to the Under Percent's Tempest, you are there to definitely like watch an experience, be immersed, have moments of interaction. But the performance goes on, the Tempest will run its course. Where in Dr. Crumb's, you are front and center. That performer is pushing you to be front and center, because even in between challenges, different obstacles and puzzles we had to solve, we turned to kind of like a hub space, and we're like doing funny moments of like interaction, or Dr. Crumb asks us to be like, okay, well, to be part of my evil organization, you need to show that maybe you can entrap people. So like you over there, pretend to be vulnerable and try to pull me in. And then when I finally get close enough, that's when you go in for the kill. And we all role played our little attempts to, lure the doctor in, and then, whether that was like karate chop him to death or just punch him, whatever it may be, really made the experience, to your point, Kevin. Like the puzzles were fun, nothing too terribly complicated to write home about, but I'm thinking constantly more as I drift away from when I experienced it, all of those moments of group interaction amongst ourselves, the other players, or with Dr. Crumb or any of the other characters that were being played.
I mean, having done this like a early in pandemic, it was just a lot of fun, and it really felt like going to an escape room with friends when you have like one of those escape rooms where there's a performer in it. And uh, I think it's a delight. I'm so glad it's back. It was gone for a little bit. It's just a very smart show. It's a very smart experience. It's great to get like an escape room crew together and do like a far flung crew. And like I think when they originally set it up, they were thinking like people who like live very far apart from each other. And then pandemic happened. They realized, oh, people even lived like around the corner from each other who couldn't do this anymore. But the fact that like the whole teamwork is baked into the setup, with if you're one character you can see things that another character can't, and having to share information based off of different perceptions, that's something that you can't do in a physical escape room. And it's something that they do to great effect here. It was something that was done in the Jumanji Void experience, and I love seeing it. And the performers, and the performer that I had sounds like much like Patrick, like just really great. Just like it's great, it's fun, it's funny, and I'm so glad it's back.
Well, and to the point that Noah made, like it's an escape room that you could do from anywhere with anyone. If we were never in fear, we always had at least like 2 minutes available in each challenge before we, solved it or completed the last obstacle. But even if we had failed everything and had not maybe reached the intended ending of the experience, I still think I would have had a really fantastic time. Like like the environments were really cool. It just really were awesome to explore, and made the most of VR and everything it can do. And that performer is the star of the experience in that sense of like the center. It's what holds Dr. Crumbs together and really draws you in. So I've stumbled into this idea that I almost want to like try to get some people and do really terribly and see what happens. And could we still have an amazing time? And I suspect we will, but it would be a new way in for sure.
Oh, I would be super down to do that. I want to say, or I want to ask, what would you say is the best? And actually, I'd be curious between Patrick and Noah if you are in agreement about this. More from like a logistical standpoint, if it's up to 8 players, do you have a sense of what the kind of generally the ideal number is?
So when I did it last week, it was 5 of us in total, which seemed perfectly right. Because there's the 5 of us talking. There's typically a character that a performer is portraying, is talking. It's very easy to lose audio, like in the sense that we're all talking over each other, and the sound system on some headsets isn't there yet, so it gets very clippy. So people, get lost very easily. So I felt like my guess would be probably 3 to 6. The thing with the price point is it's a flat rate. So the $75 to book a session, an hour-long session, it can just be you and one other person. If you really want, it could be up to 8 people. But I felt like 5 was like, yeah, this just feels really good.
Nice, and that kind of captures like the normal escape room experience too, right? 4 to 5 is usually that kind of sweet spot in terms of an in-person escape room, and it seems like that kind of echoes that in the virtual world.
Yeah, I would completely confer. I think when I did it, we might have only had 3 people, and I think it would have been maybe a little easier to navigate with a 4th. But I gotta imagine like starting to get upwards of like beyond 5. It just you wind up in that situation where there's like not really enough to do, and the crosstalk gets difficult. Like yeah,
it
4
does
or 5.
seem. Yeah, and it did seem really easy to scale it too. It sure seemed like there was always conveniently just enough buttons for all 5 of us to be on. Like the only way to open a door is for each of us to be standing on a platform. So it even if for some reason you book a group of 8 and you get left behind in that classic escape room experience where you're overshadowed, you still are going to need to do something. Your presence is still needed. You have to be involved. Instead of letting someone else decode the puzzle with the shoes and the stars and how they relate to the fabric color on the rug, you definitely cannot be passive. You have to be involved, which I think at the very least is still good. Like, no one can be left behind, it seems, in Dr. Crumb's.
That's always what you want. All right, I'm going to jump in real fast with my topic of the week as I kind of continue my journey through Southern California's Halloween season theme park. So I went to Disneyland this past weekend for their spooky time. And it's also, everything's kind of weird right there now because like all the characters are not near the people. And that's going to tie into something we're going to talk about in a second when we get to the Galaxy's Edge part. My main hot take here is that I wish they would keep Haunted Mansion around for the Halloween season, as it is Haunted Mansion Holiday is nice and apparently celebrating its 20th anniversary, which is crazy.
Oh my God, they've been doing it for 20 years.
20 years.
Wait. Is Haunted Mansion not available year round?
So okay, I guess this is for people who are not inside LA. Noah's tempting copyright laws right now with the music from Nightmare Before Christmas, which is the overlay they do on Haunted Mansion from like late September to early January to do the Nightmare Before Christmas thing. So we lose out on the normal spooky times for the Nightmare Before Christmas.
And here's the thing, like Haunted Mansion Holiday in and of itself, I find to be completely delightful. But there's also the issue where it's like, but you also want the Haunted Mansion. It's like you almost wish they just like had like 2 Haunted Mansions. So they just keep
whole new Haunted Mansion.
Yeah. They just built the second floor. It's like, wow, it's twice as big now. Yeah, all the Tim Burton stuff's up on top. So,
Yeah, and that's what it is. So it is cool, but it's 20 years running during the most appropriate time for Haunted Mansion. You lose out on the most appropriate Haunted Mansion. So that is that. And then Galaxy's Edge, just like real quick to touch on that. And I'm sure we've talked about Star Wars a lot on this show. Who knows?
In life, I'm pretty sure you mean.
So this one, it's with the characters kind of not interacting, they actually are kind of behind things and kind of try to keep away from people a little bit. So while I was actually in Galaxy's Edge pretty late at night, and Ray and Chewbacca were actually out, but there's an area where they have some like land speeders, and so they were kind of hanging out over there and actually like working on the land speeders and like playing.
They were over at the garage working on the
Yeah.
speeders.
Yeah.
Oh, that's different. That's new. They didn't do that before.
So, and I think it's because there's a gate there, so you can't get up to them. So I think it is probably part of the COVID restrictions. But it was actually like, it felt like, oh, like people are actually inhabiting this world in a way they normally don't, because they're actually interacting with some of the elements like around it instead of just kind of the guests. And I'm sure that's not what people always want. But it was like, oh, this tweak kind of made the land more immersive and actually takes advantage of things they don't normally do in Galaxy's Edge. So I thought that was kind of a cool way to incorporate some of those kind of social distancing things with their actors to build on some of the immersiveness of Galaxy's Edge.
Well, I believe Todd Martins had talked about that in the LA Times at one point about how, in part because the COVID restrictions and the requirements to keep everyone safe, like on Main Street is being used in a way where it's never been before. Is that correct? Where like people are up in windows. It feels like Main Street is actually the street you could find in your town now.
Yeah, so all of the characters, even in like I think New Orleans Square, like Tiana is up on the balcony sometimes, or Jack Sparrow's kind of around the pirate area, and so all the characters kind of like interacting with Disneyland as a whole a little bit differently, and it does make it feel more lived in. Yeah.
That's an interesting unintended side effect, like, and probably worth meditating on. But now we're like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
This episode's 90 minutes. So.
And thank you for everyone who has stuck with us, Sid and Benjamin, for all this time. We appreciate you. And now, does anyone have a last pitch for pick of the week before we wrap up completely?
No, but I cannot wait for Laura to leave that Arcana experience and become hooked on League of Legends. And she won't turn in reviews. Yeah. She won't go to things. She's too busy playing the game and can't be bothered. I cannot wait for that to happen.
Neither can I.
I wish I knew League enough to say like Laura's maining so and so now or something, but I don't.
I know a couple characters who. Do you want to be an archer lady?
All right, on that note, we got to go do pick of the week.
Yeah. All right.
We got to go do pick of the week, and then I got to train people on things. So,
thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next week at the same time.